They called it the apex, the perfect predator. For centuries, the galactic frontier whispered its name like a prayer or a curse, depending on who was doing the whispering. The apex was not a species, not exactly. It was a single being, born on a death world orbiting a dying star in the void between charted systems. It didn't build cities. It didn't communicate. It hunted, killed, and vanished, leaving behind the shredded hulks of warships and the bones of civilizations that had tried to capture it. In a galaxy where empires rose and fell on the strength of technology and numbers, the apex was the one thing that reminded everyone that fear was still a universal language. It was said the apex had slaughtered the Gareth fleet of 83 ships in less than 2 hours. It was said it stalked the frozen jungles of Parnas IV for sport, not hunger. It was said it was unkillable, that the void itself bent around it like a loyal hound. Every tale grew darker, every encounter shorter, until no one dared to cross its hunting grounds. And still the apex moved unseen, its motives unknown, until the humans came. The Galactic Union had learned to fear humans slowly, one incident at a time. Their homeworld, Earth, was catalogued as a Class 12 death world, barely survivable, racked with predators, toxins, and unstable climates. Most civilizations didn't visit such worlds, let alone evolve on them. Yet somehow humanity had not only survived but thrived. They spread like wildfire, their ships crude but resilient, their soldiers mad enough to fight hand-to-hand with creatures that would send any other species into shock. To the Union, humans were a paradox. Friendly, emotional, almost naive, but capable of atrocities that defied reason when provoked. The apex met its first human on the edge of the Perseid Rift. Captain Mara, Ilian of the Terran vessel. Resolute Dawn had been tracking the energy trail of missing convoys for weeks. She wasn't supposed to be there. The rift was beyond safe space, a labyrinth of gravitational eddies and magnetic storms. But Mara had never been the kind to turn back just because the map said unknown. She had a scar down her left cheek from her first survival drop, a reminder that Deathworlders didn't wait for permission. Her crew, a mix of humans and nervous aliens, whispered warnings about the apex, but she dismissed them. Monsters were just animals that hadn't learned respect yet, she said. Everything bled. Everything broke. Everything bowed to something stronger. They found the wreckage on the 7th day. A Union trade ship, torn in half, floating silently in the dark. No signs of fire or energy discharge. The hull had been split clean through as if by a blade the size of a mountain. The logs were corrupted, but one partial recording survived. Static, screaming, and a brief glimpse of something moving past the viewport. Not a ship, not a life form that made sense, just eyes. 2 enormous gold-lit eyes staring through the glass, and then the feed went black. "Get us closer," Mara ordered. Her pilot, a nervous Arkan named Tev, hesitated. "Closer? Captain, this is Apex territory." "The stories are stories," she interrupted. "That's a corpse out there, Tev. Something did that." "I want to know what." The Resolute Dawn drifted through the debris, sensors humming. There were no life signs, no radiation spikes, nothing. The void was silent. Then, as they passed the central hull fragment, something pinged on the scanners. Briefly, faintly, a single organic reading, large, dense, and moving. "Contact," shouted the weapons officer. The display flickered. The object wasn't approaching. It was behind them. Before anyone could react, the ship shuddered violently. Warning klaxons howled. The rear thrusters went offline. The hull camera feeds erupted into static. And then, for half a second, an image cut through. A silhouette clinging to the Resolute Dawn's hull. 2 arms, 2 legs, but too long, too fluid. Armor that shimmered like oil. Eyes like molten suns. "It's on us!" Someone screamed. Mara didn't hesitate. "Seal bulkheads 3 through 6. "Charge all cannons!" The crew scrambled. The apex moved faster. The outer hull groaned as something tore through it. The creature slipped inside like a shadow through water, silent and unstoppable. The first squad that engaged it never had time to fire. Their body cams showed only glimpses, a blur of claws, a voice that wasn't a growl but a vibration deep enough to rattle bones. Mara grabbed her rifle and stormed down the corridor. "You want a fight, beast?" "You found one." She found it in the engine bay. It stood twice her height, humanoid only in outline. Its skin, or armor, shifted constantly, absorbing and reflecting light. The air around it shimmered with distortion. It turned its head slowly when it saw her. For a long moment neither moved. "You're the apex," Mara said, voice low. The creature tilted its head. When it spoke, its voice was a rasp like grinding metal. "You are not afraid," Mara smirked. "Should I be?" It regarded her with a predator's calm. All others ran. "You stand." "I'm not all others." She raised her rifle. "You killed them." The apex's eyes narrowed. "They entered my den. They took what was mine." "Yours?" she echoed. It gestured toward the wreckage outside. "The void is mine. They sought to harvest it. The rift breathes, and they tried to cage it." "You protect it," Mara realized. "Protect?" The apex tasted the word as if it were foreign. "No, I hunt those who disrupt the balance. I am the balance." Mara lowered her weapon slightly. "You're not a mindless beast." The creature's golden eyes flickered with amusement, or maybe recognition. "Nor are you." They stood there, two predators measuring each other, until the Resolute Dawn systems began to fail around them. The apex turned toward the reactor core, where the magnetic field was destabilizing. "Your vessel will die," it said simply. "Then help me stop it." The apex looked back at her for a long moment, then moved, faster than any human could follow. Its claws sliced into the control panel, rerouting power with brutal precision. Sparks flew. The lights dimmed, and then silence. The reactor stabilized. Mara stared. "You just saved us." The creature straightened, watching her carefully. "I maintain balance. You do not threaten it." "Not yet." Before she could speak again, it turned toward the hull breach. "Leave this place, Deathworlder. The void remembers you now." "Wait," she called. "Who are you, really?" It paused. "Apex is what they named me. But names are for prey." And then it was gone, vanishing into the black like smoke in water. The Resolute Dawn limped back to safe space, damaged but alive. Mara filed her report, but no one believed her. The Union dismissed it as hallucination, stress, void madness. But she knew what she had seen. The apex was not a monster. It was a guardian of something older than any of them, and it had spoken to her. Weeks later, as she sat alone in her quarters reviewing the logs, the comm light flickered. It wasn't from her ship. It wasn't from any known channel. Just a single message, transmitted in a low frequency humans didn't use. She played it. A voice, deep, low, unmistakable, spoke 3 words. "You should not have stayed." Then silence. She didn't sleep that night. By dawn, Union reports began flooding in from across the Perseid sector. Entire fleets missing, sensor ghosts moving through the dark. The apex was hunting again. But this time, it wasn't just in the rift. Mara stared at the data feeds, heart pounding. It had left its den. And somewhere deep inside her she knew why. The apex had said she was different, that she did not threaten the balance. But the Union had seen her report, and the Union was coming. 1,000 ships, scanners, drones, weapons, all heading into the void to kill the thing she'd spoken to. The galaxy's greatest predator had met a human Deathworlder, and for the first time, the apex had spared its prey. But mercy, in the language of monsters, was never without meaning. Mara didn't know it yet, but when the fleets entered the rift, when they unleashed their fury on the darkness, it would not be the apex that fell to its knees. It would be the stars themselves that trembled before what came next. The Union fleets came in waves, polished metal leviathans stretching across the dark, bristling with cannons and arrogance. They called the operation Silent Spear, a name meant to inspire courage, but it carried the echo of fear instead. Every admiral, every ship captain, every soldier knew the stories. They'd seen the wrecks, the black boxes filled with screams, the half-finished transmissions cut off mid-word. Still, they told themselves they were ready. The apex was just a predator, flesh and blood, bound by the laws of nature. And the Union had technology, strategy, numbers. They would corner it, study it, dissect it, and make the void safe again. That was the plan. That was the lie. Captain Mara Ilian sat in the war room aboard the Resolute Dawn, staring at the holomap of the rift. Dozens of red icons marked the incoming fleets, converging toward a single black point at the center. That point wasn't a planet or a star. It was an absence, something scanners couldn't penetrate, a dead zone in space that devoured signals and light alike. The Apex's den. She had been ordered to accompany the fleet as an observer, though everyone knew why she was really there. She was the only living person who had spoken to the Apex and survived. The Union's high command wanted her to guide their pursuit, to help them anticipate its moves. But Mara knew the truth. They wanted bait. Admiral Var, a broad-shouldered Thalorian with skin like stone and eyes like glass, didn't bother hiding his disdain for her. "You expect me to believe this thing can reason?" He rumbled across the table. "It's a beast. It kills anything that enters its territory." "It spoke," Mara said quietly. "It understood balance, territory, motive. It's not mindless." "Then it can be reasoned with." She shook her head. "No, you don't reason with storms. You survive them." The Admiral gave a thin smile. "We've conquered storms before, Captain. You forget who we are." Mara looked at the holographic map again. That's exactly what the Apex is counting on. By the fourth day, the fleets entered the rift. The gravitational currents twisted and pulled, distorting sensors and light. Shadows seemed to stretch wrong, and time itself began to feel uncertain. The further they went, the quieter it became. No comms, no chatter, just the hum of engines and the pulse of human hearts waiting for something to happen. Then it began. The lead ship, Union Pride, vanished. One moment it was there, a gleaming fortress of steel. The next, static. No explosion, no wreckage, just gone. Seconds later, another ship, Larian's Promise, blinked off scanners. Then another. Panic rippled through the comm channels. "Fleet 2, hold formation," Var barked. "Scan for spatial distortion." "There's nothing, sir," came the reply. "We're blind." Mara's pulse quickened. The Apex wasn't attacking. It was hunting, picking them off, unseen, unheard, striking through the gaps in their arrogance. "Admiral," she said, "you have to pull back." He glared at her. "You think we'll run because of a few tricks? The beast bleeds. We'll find it." But they didn't find it. It found them. The Resolute Dawn's sensors flared red. Something massive moved beneath their formation, a shadow within a shadow. Mara looked out the viewport, and for a moment she saw it. A shape too large to understand. It wasn't a ship. It wasn't a creature. It was both. The void itself seemed to bend around it, the stars warping in its wake. And at its center, those same golden eyes. "Target locked," shouted the weapons officer. "No!" Mara shouted. "Don't fire." Too late. The Union fleet unleashed a storm of plasma and rail fire. The space around them blazed with artificial suns. For a heartbeat, it looked like victory. Then the light bent. The energy streams curved, twisting back on their sources. The Apex's form shimmered, absorbing and redirecting the energy as if the void itself obeyed its command. Beams tore through Allied ships. Explosions bloomed like dying stars. The comms filled with screams. "Fall back! Fall back!" Var roared. But there was nowhere to run. The gravitational storms sealed every path of retreat. The Apex was driving them, herding them deeper into the rift. Mara gripped the railing. "It's not fighting to kill us all, it's guiding us." "Guiding?" Tev shouted over the alarms. "Guiding us where?" "To sea." The Apex appeared again, this time directly before the Resolute Dawn, hovering in the dark. Its golden eyes locked onto Mara through the viewport. For a moment the world fell silent. Then, impossibly, the creature spoke. Not through speakers or translation software, but directly into every mind aboard. "You brought war into the womb of the void. You burn what you cannot understand." Var staggered, clutching his head. "It's in my mind. Make it stop." The Apex's voice deepened, resonating like thunder. I warned the Deathworlder. You did not listen. Mara pressed her hand against the glass. You could have killed us all already. Why haven't you? The Apex's form shimmered, its shape dissolving into strands of light. Because you are not all the same. And then the rift changed. The dark peeled back, revealing what lay within, the truth of its domain. Beneath the currents of gravitational storms lay a world, vast and hidden, suspended within a cocoon of folded space, a planet of black seas and silver skies, covered in massive structures that pulsed faintly with energy. The apex descended toward it, and the Union ships followed, helplessly drawn by the distortion field. By the stars, Tev whispered. It's a world. Not a world, Mara said. A nest. The ships emerged above the planet's surface. The scanners flared with thousands of energy readings, not from weapons, but from life. Massive creatures moved across the landscape. Beasts of impossible size and design, half organic, half metallic, breathing in rhythm with the void itself. The apex was not alone. This is impossible, Var breathed. How can anything live here? Mara turned to him, her face pale. It doesn't live here. The rift protects them. This is where the apex keeps the balance. The Admiral didn't care. Fire everything we have. If we destroy it, we destroy the threat. Don't, Mara shouted, but he gave the order anyway. The fleet's cannons ignited again. The air above the world turned white. The planet's crust cracked. The beast screamed, a sound that shook space itself. And then the apex moved. It was everywhere at once, a blur of darkness and light. The sky tore open. Union ships exploded, crushed by invisible pressure. Others were dragged down into the black oceans below, where glowing shapes rose to meet them. It wasn't a battle. It was a massacre. The Resolute Dawn was struck by debris, spiraling toward the surface. Mara shouted commands as alarms blared. Brace for impact! The ship slammed into the ground, tearing through metal and stone. When the world stopped spinning, half the crew was dead, the other half barely conscious. Smoke filled the air. Outside, the world roared with fire and sound. Mara staggered from the wreckage, clutching her rifle. She looked up and froze. The apex stood before her. Its armor was cracked, glowing faintly with molten gold. Wounds bled light, and yet even in pain, it stood tall, unbroken. You see now, it said softly. The void is alive. You came to kill what you did not understand. Now you must witness it. Mara fell to her knees, staring up at it. We didn't know. The apex tilted its head. No one ever does. Behind it, the sky burned. Union ships fell like meteors, consumed by the very beasts they had tried to destroy. Yet even as death rained down, Mara felt something deeper, a rhythm beneath the chaos. The apex was not fighting for vengeance. It was defending life in a form no human mind could comprehend. The creature turned to her once more. You are not like them, it said. You do not hunt without purpose. I came to understand, she said. The apex's eyes flickered. Then you will live. It reached out, touching her forehead lightly. For an instant, the world vanished. She saw flashes, visions of stars collapsing into light, of civilizations rising and falling like tides, of predators and prey locked in endless cycles of creation and destruction. And at the heart of it all, she saw Earth, her homeworld, burning, growing, changing. She saw humanity's reflection in every monster ever born. When she opened her eyes again, the apex was gone. The battlefield lay in ruins. Only the Resolute Dawn remained, crumpled but intact. Above her, the stars pulsed faintly with gold light. The apex had spared her again, but the Union had not forgiven her. The transmission log showed she had made no effort to stop the creature, no attempt to destroy it. To them, she was a traitor, a sympathizer. As the recovery fleets arrived weeks later, they found her alone amid the wreckage, staring into the sky where the rift shimmered faintly. They asked her what she had seen. She only said one thing: we were not the hunters. That night, as they carried her aboard the rescue ship, a low hum filled the void. Every sensor flickered, every instrument trembled. Somewhere, far out in the rift, a voice spoke. low, deep, and final. The apex bows to no empire. But what no one heard, no one except Mara, was the second half of the message, whispered directly into her mind. Except one. And the sound that followed was not threat or warning. It was the sound of a predator lowering its head in. Recognition. The galaxy's greatest hunter had bowed. To a human. And nothing in the stars would ever be the same. Again. They bound her wrists with alloy. Cuffs that hummed faintly with suppression fields. The kind used for psionics and prisoners of war. Captain Mara Ilian didn't resist. The guards, 4 of them, armored in black with visors like insect eyes, marched her down the gleaming corridor of the Union Tribunal vessel, a flagship built for judgment rather than battle. Its halls smelled of sterilized air and political fear. She had been rescued technically, but she felt more like salvage. Every step echoed like a verdict. She had expected interrogation. She hadn't expected ceremony. The chamber doors opened to reveal a crescent-shaped hall filled with delegates from 100 worlds. The Union Tribunal, in full session. Flags of every species and system hung above them, shimmering like ghosts. Cameras floated silently, broadcasting the trial across half the galaxy. The Union wanted spectacle. A scapegoat to blame for the Rift disaster. For the hundreds of ships lost. For the humiliation of facing something beyond their control. At the center sat High Chancellor Varen, his silver eyes hard as frozen stars. "Captain Mara Ilian," he began, voice amplified by unseen machinery. "You stand accused of dereliction of duty, collaboration with an enemy entity, and high treason against the Galactic Union." The words carried no surprise. She'd already read them in the summons. What mattered was the undertone. The desperate need to turn the loss into theater. She wasn't being judged for failure. She was being offered up as penance. "I didn't collaborate," she said evenly. "I survived." The Chancellor's mouth tightened. "You claim survival. Yet out of 372 ships, only yours remains. You claim the creature spared you. Yet you cannot explain why." "I can," she said quietly. "It wasn't a creature. It was a guardian. You called it a monster because you didn't understand what it protected." A murmur rippled through the hall. Several delegates whispered to each other, faces pale. Varen leaned forward. "You expect us to believe that thing was benevolent?" "It killed thousands," she said. "But it killed because you invaded its home. You thought you could tame it, like everything else you've conquered. You called it a threat, but you never asked what it was guarding." "Enough," Varen snapped. "You will answer the charges, not deliver sermons." Mara smiled faintly, though it never reached her eyes. "Then maybe stop pretending you want the truth." Gasps filled the hall. Varen's hand twitched as though he might order her removed, but he hesitated. There was something about her composure, cold, steady, unbroken, that unsettled even him. "Tell us, Captain," he said after a pause. "Where is this entity now?" Mara looked past him, out through the vast viewing window that stretched across the tribunal's rear wall. Beyond it, space glittered with distant stars. "Watching," the Chancellor frowned. "From the rift? Closer than you think." And as if the universe itself had been waiting for her words, the lights flickered. The entire ship trembled once, then again more violently. The guards reached for their weapons. The air seemed to hum. Not with machinery, but with resonance. Something massive moved beyond the hull. The view outside darkened. Shadows rippled across the stars. Gasps filled the hall as the delegates realized what they were seeing. The void itself was shifting. The apex had arrived. It dwarfed the tribunal vessel, a colossal shape wrapped in tendrils of light and mist. Its golden eyes burned through the black, staring directly at the chamber. Systems across the ship screamed in alarm. Shields rose automatically, weapons charged. But the creature did not attack. It simply hovered, silent, waiting. Varen's voice broke through the chaos. "All batteries, target the entity. Fire at will, no!" Mara shouted, struggling against her restraints. "You'll only provoke it!" But the command was given. The vessel's cannons lit up, beams of concentrated plasma lancing into the void. They struck the apex and vanished. Not deflected, not absorbed, simply erased. Then the creature moved. Slowly, deliberately, one massive claw extended. It reached toward the ship, and the hull groaned like a living thing under pressure. The tribunal hall erupted in panic. Delegates fled. Guards aimed rifles at Mara as if she were somehow commanding it. "Make it stop," one of them shouted. "I can't," she said, her voice trembling, not with fear but with awe. "It's not here to destroy you." Varen turned on her. "Then what does it want?" Her answer came not from her lips but from the air itself. A low, resonant voice filled the hall. Ancient, vast, undeniable. Balance. Every being froze. The sound bypassed ears entirely, echoing inside their minds. The Apex's voice was colder this time, heavier, layered with fury and sorrow. "You judged what you did not understand. You burned the cradle of creation. The rift is not yours to command." Varen stood trembling. You can speak?" "I speak when there is one who listens." The golden eyes shifted, focusing on Mara. This one listened. The hall fell into absolute silence. Mara could feel her heart hammering in her chest. The Apex was defending her, not just sparing her, protecting her. The High Chancellor tried to recover his composure. "You've murdered countless lives. You are a threat to every civilized system in this galaxy." The Apex's eyes flared brighter. "Civilized?" The word dripped with contempt. "You poison your own worlds, devour your kin, enslave the weak. You call it order. I call it rot." The temperature in the chamber seemed to drop. The delegates shivered. The lights dimmed again. Varen took a step forward, defiance warring with terror. "If you think we will submit—" The Apex's voice cut through him like a blade. "You misunderstand, little Emperor. I did not come to make you submit." The hull groaned again. A blinding pulse of light filled the viewport. "I came to kneel." The golden eyes lowered. The Apex, this being that had slaughtered fleets, silenced armadas, defied empires, bowed its head toward Mara Illian. No one breathed. No one moved. "Why?" whispered Tev, who had been rescued along with her, and now stood trembling beside the guards. Why would it bow to her? Mara didn't answer. She didn't know. The Apex spoke again, softer this time. "Among your kind, there are those who see beyond dominion." She saw the truth. That the void and life are one. That predators do not rule. They protect. The creature's golden eyes dimmed slightly, their fury fading to something almost mournful. Your kind were born on a death world. You learned to kill to live, but you forgot why. You forgot the balance that made you. She remembered. Mara swallowed hard. "Why me?" "Because you did not look at me and see a monster. You looked and saw a mirror." Varen staggered back. "This is madness. Guards, seize her!" The Apex's gaze snapped toward him, and the entire tribunal shook. The guards froze mid-step, unable to move. The creature's voice deepened, a growl like the birth of thunder. "Touch her, and your fleets will burn again." Mara looked up at the Apex. "Stop," she said softly. "Enough death!" The golden eyes turned to her once more. "As you will." And just like that, the pressure lifted. The guard stumbled, gasping for air. The Apex began to withdraw, its vast form dissolving into the fabric of space. Before it vanished completely, it spoke one last time. "The void remembers who listens, Deathworlder. I will not forget." Then it was gone. The stars returned. The alarms fell silent. The tribunal vessel hung motionless, surrounded by a silence so profound it felt holy. Varen slumped into his chair, sweat running down his temples. "Do you realize what you've done?" he hissed. "You've made us look weak in front of the entire galaxy." Mara met his gaze. "You made yourselves weak when you decided understanding was beneath you." He glared at her. "You'll hang for this?" "Maybe," she said, turning toward the viewport. "But at least now you know what kneels before us." They confined her afterward, of course, isolated in a cell deep within the tribunal vessel. But the air felt different now. The guards avoided her eyes. The crew whispered about her in reverent tones. The Apex's bow had been broadcast across the galaxy. Billions had seen it. An ancient predator lowering itself before a single human. The balance of power had shifted, though no one yet knew in whose favor. Mara sat on the edge of her bunk, staring out through the tiny cell window into the endless dark. Somewhere out there, beyond the stars, she could still feel it, the faint hum of its presence, watching, waiting. Tev visited her once before they reached the core. He stood outside the energy barrier holding a tablet filled with reports. "The Union's panicking," he said quietly. "Half the systems are demanding independence. Some worlds are calling you the listener. Others—" He hesitated. "Others think you're the start of a new religion." She laughed softly. "That figures." He looked uneasy. "Do you think it'll come back?" She glanced out the window again. It never left. That night, the ship drifted through deep space. The crew tried to rest. The delegates hid behind their walls of rhetoric and fear. And in the quiet between stars, a ripple moved across the void. A soundless promise carried on the cosmic wind. The galaxy's greatest predator had bowed to a human once. And now, it waited. For the moment humanity would decide what to do with that power. For the first time in recorded history, the stars were holding their breath. The days that followed were strange ones, filled with whispers, fear, and the uneasy weight of myth. Captain Mara Ilian became a name broadcast across every system, half cursed, half worshipped. The image of the apex bowing to her replayed endlessly across galactic networks, dissected by analysts, poets, and zealots alike. Some called her humanity's savior. Others called her the spark that would undo the Union itself. Within the cold metal walls of her cell aboard the tribunal vessel Vigilant Dawn, she sat alone, her wrists still bound, her mind heavy with silence. The guards avoided her eyes now. She could feel it, the change in how they moved, the way they whispered outside her cell door. They were afraid, not of her, but of what might happen because of her. Every tremor of the ship's hull sent a ripple of tension through the crew. Every flicker of the lights made them wonder if it had returned. It hadn't. Not yet. But Mara could still feel it. Some deep, invisible pulse in the far distance of her thoughts. Like the echo of a heartbeat too vast to belong to any creature. The apex was not gone. It was waiting. On the third night, High Chancellor Varen himself came to see her. He wore none of his usual regalia. No silver cape, no ornate crest of office. Just the plain dark uniform of a man who had seen his empire tremble. The guard stood back as he approached her cell, his voice sharp and cold. "You have no idea what you've done." Mara looked up from the floor. "You keep saying that," she said quietly, "but I think I do. The footage of the thing bowing to you has destabilized half the Union. There are riots on Helios Prime. The Dravari Senate has declared neutrality. Even the Varntal fleets are threatening secession." He leaned closer, his eyes burning. "Do you understand what that means? Civil war." Mara stood slowly, meeting his gaze through the energy barrier. "It means they finally saw what real power looks like. Not guns, not fleets, not treaties. Understanding." Varen's lip curled. "Understanding? You think that thing can be reasoned with? It's a monster." "It bowed," she said simply. "Then it plays games," he snapped. "Predators mimic submission to lure prey closer. Or it remembers mercy." His jaw tightened. "Mercy doesn't exist in nature." "Then you've never truly looked at it." They stood in silence for a long moment, the hum of the cell between them like the breath of the ship itself. Then he turned away. "You will stand trial before the Core Council in 3 cycles," he said. "You'll be made an example, publicly. Whatever it is you think you represent will die with you." He left without another word. The guards followed, leaving her alone again in the half-dark. That night, Mara dreamed of the rift. She saw the great black world again, its seas alive with starlight, its air filled with the sound of endless breathing. The apex stood there, wounded but unbowed, surrounded by its kind, massive forms like living storms. It looked up at her through the haze and said only one word: balance. When she woke, her heart was racing. The air in the cell had changed, thicker somehow, as if gravity itself had grown curious. The lights flickered once, then steadied. She exhaled slowly. "You're close," she whispered. Across the galaxy, the Core Council convened. It was the largest gathering of power in recorded history. 12 species, 37 systems, thousands of delegates. The hall on Ilarion Prime was built of living crystal that reflected every color of the cosmos. They called it the Chamber of Unity, though now it echoed with discord. Some demanded the extermination of the apex. Others argued for containment. A few, the bold or the wise, suggested something far more dangerous: communication. But none of them could escape the image burned into their collective memory: a predator kneeling before a human. Mara's transport arrived under heavy escort. Crowds lined the crystal avenues, shouting, chanting, throwing debris. Some raised signs calling her a prophet. Others screamed for her death. As she was led into the hall, she felt none of it. Her eyes were drawn upward, to the massive skylight above, where stars glittered faintly beyond the city's shield. The trial was swift. The Chancellor delivered the charges with all the ceremony of inevitability: treason, collaboration, dereliction. Her defense was irrelevant. Her guilt had been decided before she ever set foot in the chamber. When they asked her if she had any last words, she said only this: "I didn't summon the apex. You did. When you stopped listening." The sentence was death. They planned to execute her publicly, broadcast across the entire network. The Chancellor believed spectacle could restore the Union's faith. He didn't realize the galaxy had already shifted beyond his grasp. At dawn, they brought her to the execution platform atop the spire of the council hall. The wind howled between the towers, carrying with it the scent of ozone and dust. 1,000 cameras floated in the air. Billions watched. She was forced to her knees, her wrists bound, her hair tangled from captivity. The Chancellor stood beside her, voice rising above the storm. "Let all who watch remember this day. No creature, be it alien or human, stands above the law of the Union. Let this traitor's death remind us that we are still masters of our destiny." He raised his hand, signaling the executioner. The energy pike ignited, humming with lethal power. Mara closed her eyes, exhaling slowly. She didn't pray. She didn't plead. She only waited for what she already knew was coming. The first sign was silence. Total, absolute silence. The wind stopped. The hum of the pike died. The lights across the city flickered once, twice, then went black. The sky above them dimmed as though a vast hand had covered the stars. Every camera feed shattered into static. Every ship in orbit screamed with failing systems. And then came the sound. A low, resonant hum that shook the towers and rattled the bones of every being on the planet. It was not thunder. It was not weaponry. It was something older, deeper. The sound of the void awakening. A shadow fell across the city. A vast silhouette that blocked out half the sky. Gasps rose from the crowd as the form resolved into something impossible. The apex had come. It descended slowly through the atmosphere, wrapped in waves of shimmering energy. Buildings trembled beneath its presence. Air currents spiraled like whirlpools around its massive form. Lightning crackled across its armor as golden eyes the size of battleships opened and fixed on the execution platform. Guards raised weapons. The Chancellor screamed orders. Cannons fired from the defense towers, streaking beams of plasma into the sky. They vanished before reaching it, swallowed whole by the distortion field surrounding the creature. The apex spoke. Not aloud, but through every mind present. You would kill the one who listened. The sound of its voice made the crystal towers vibrate. Some shattered outright, raining fragments onto the streets below. The apex lowered its head until its gaze filled the horizon. She heard the truth of the void. You heard only fear. The executioner fell to his knees, dropping his weapon. The Chancellor shouted, "Stop it! It's manipulating you! It's controlling our minds!" Mara stood slowly, the cuffs on her wrists snapping open without a touch. The apex's gaze softened as it looked at her. "You are free, Deathworlder." "Don't," she whispered, stepping forward. "If you destroy them, there'll be nothing left to learn from." "They would kill you." "Maybe, but they're still part of the balance." The apex regarded her for a long moment. Then it lifted its gaze to the city below. The billions watching, the soldiers trembling, the leaders frozen in awe and terror. "Balance," it said again. and the word rippled through the air like the passing of an ancient wind. A pulse of light erupted from its core, soft, golden, almost gentle. The shock wave rolled across the planet, washing through buildings, ships, and systems alike. Every weapon powered down. Every engine fell silent. Every heartbeat synchronized for one infinite moment. Then, just as suddenly, it was gone. The apex rose into the sky once more, its form dissolving into clouds and starlight. Before it vanished, its voice came one last time, echoing in every mind across the galaxy. You have been spared not for your strength, but for one who remembered what you forgot. Do not force the void to remember again. And then it was gone. The light returned. The winds resumed. The city stood silent, broken glass glittering in the dawn. Mara remained standing on the platform, her hair whipping around her face. The Chancellor was on his knees, pale and shaking. The guards had dropped their weapons. All around, the crowd stared in stunned silence. For the first time in its long history, the Union had been judged by something greater than itself, and spared. Mara looked toward the sky, where a faint golden shimmer still lingered like the afterglow of a dying star. She didn't smile. She didn't speak. She only whispered, barely audible, "Thank you." In the days that followed, the council dissolved. Systems began to break away, forming new alliances. Some sought peace, others sought power. But all of them knew one unshakable truth. The galaxy had changed forever. The Predator had bowed, the empires had fallen, and a single human had reminded the stars of humility. Yet even in the chaos, Mara knew this was not the end. The apex had not left forever. It was watching, as it always did, waiting to see if the galaxy would learn or burn. Because balance was never a promise. It was a test. And soon, it would be tested again. In the years that followed the day the sky darkened, the galaxy fractured like glass struck by truth. The Union was gone, its fleets scattered, its laws forgotten. Whole systems broke away to form their own councils, coalitions, and dominions. Some sought peace, guided by the memory of the apex's warning. Others built new weapons, hungrier and colder than before, believing they could control what the Union could not. And through it all, the legend of the Deathworlder spread. From the glittering spires of Ilarion Prime to the rusted mining stations at the galaxy's edge. Children whispered her name before sleep. Soldiers painted it on their armor for luck. Mara Ilian, the listener, the one the apex bowed to, the one who spoke to the dark and lived. Mara herself wanted none of it. After her release, she vanished from the public eye. No ship logs recorded her movements. No transmissions bore her voice. Some said she returned to Earth. Others swore she wandered the void, following whispers only she could hear. The truth lay somewhere between. She lived on the edge of charted space, aboard a small freighter rebuilt from the bones of the Resolute Dawn. Its hull was scarred, its engines temperamental, but it flew, and that was enough. The galaxy around her had become a storm of ambition. The Dravari Ascendancy conquered 3 sectors under the banner of survival through domination. The Varntal forged weapons that could bend gravity itself. And in the shadows between systems, rumors spread of something worse. Beasts like the apex, smaller but born of the same unknown source, appearing in remote sectors, devouring ships whole. The void was changing. The balance had been disturbed again. Mara knew what it meant. One night, as her ship drifted through a silent corridor of dark space, she felt it again. That pulse, deep and low, like the echo of her own heartbeat magnified 1,000-fold. The apex was calling, not with words but with something older, memory itself. She went to the viewport and watched as the stars outside seemed to bend and shimmer. For a moment, she thought she saw golden light ripple through the black, like breath across water. "You waited long enough," she whispered. The voice came as a whisper through her mind, distant but unmistakable. "You feel it too," Mara's breath caught. "The others?" "They wake," the apex replied. "Balance trembles. Those who sought to cage creation have torn the veil again." She closed her eyes. "The new weapons?" "Yes." The voice carried sorrow, not anger. They call them defense, but they feed on life. The same mistake your kind always makes. Dominion over harmony. What do you want me to do? She asked. What you always have, it said. Listen. And then it was gone. For weeks, she traced the echoes. The freighter became her compass, following gravitational disturbances and strange bursts of radiation across the void. Each one led to a scene of ruin. Entire outposts torn apart. Fleets vanished without a trace, and on some worlds, the unmistakable residue of energy like that of the Apex's home. Something was spreading, something that had been sleeping since the beginning of time. At the edge of the Dravari frontier, she found the truth. The Ascendancy had built a weapon, a machine the size of a moon, designed to replicate the rift's energies. They called it Project Dominion. It was meant to create controllable rifts, to summon power from beyond reality itself. But it had gone wrong. The void did not yield its gifts willingly. From the machine's heart, something was emerging. Vast, formless, alive. She watched from her ship as the project's containment field flickered. The space around it twisted, fracturing light. Then came the first roar, deep, endless, alien. The stars seemed to recoil. The creature that stepped from the rift was not like the apex. It was chaos given shape, its body a storm of shadows and fire, its eyes burning white instead of gold. It looked upon the galaxy not with thought, but hunger. The Dravari fleets opened fire, and the thing swallowed them whole. Their energy vanished into its form, feeding it. It grew. Mara knew there was only one being who could stop it. She closed her eyes and reached inward, not with words, but with will. The old connection still lived in her blood, in her mind. "If you can hear me," she whispered into the void, "it's happening again." For a long time, there was no answer. Then the stars went silent. When she looked up, she saw it. A ripple of gold spreading across the darkness like dawn breaking through storm clouds. The apex emerged, vast and terrible, its form unfolding like wings of shadow and light. The void itself seemed to bow to its return. The two titans faced each other across the rift. The Guardian and the Abomination, balance and chaos. Mara's ship shook as gravitational waves tore through space. The Apex's voice entered her mind, not gentle now but fierce. "You called and I came. But the price will be everything." "What do you mean?" she shouted over the noise. "If I fight, the void will not hold. Balance demands sacrifice. You'll die?" Silence. Then, "We both will." The realization hit her like a blade. No, there has to be another way. There never was. The chaos beast roared, the sound splitting the stars. It lunged forward, swallowing the distance between them in an instant. The apex met it head-on, their collision sending waves of light and energy across entire systems. Worlds trembled. Suns flickered. Mara's sensors went dead. She gripped the controls, fighting to keep the ship stable as the universe itself seemed to twist around her. Through the distortion, she saw glimpses of the battle, two gods tearing reality apart. The apex struck with precision, its movements like the rhythm of the void itself. The other answered with fury, devouring everything it touched. When their powers met, whole constellations dimmed. Mara couldn't just watch. She pushed her ship closer, through the chaos, every alarm screaming. "You don't have to do this alone!" she cried. The apex's voice came again, fainter now. "You already stand with me." "That is enough." She ignored it. The freighter's hull began to melt, panels tearing away, but she didn't stop. She steered directly into the heart of the storm, toward the rift between them. Somewhere deep inside, she felt what the apex meant about balance, about sacrifice, and she understood. "Then we share the price," she whispered. She activated the ship's reactor, overloading it. The core began to collapse in on itself, generating a surge of pure gravitational energy, the same kind that had once torn the rift open, but now it could close it. The apex sensed her intent. "Mara—" "Balance," she said softly. "You taught me that." The light consumed everything. For one infinite moment, all was silence. When the explosion faded, the rift was gone. The chaos beast with it. And so too, the apex. The void settled once more, calm and endless. Weeks later, scavenger fleets found only fragments of her ship drifting among the stars. No body, no trace, just silence, and a faint golden shimmer lingering in the debris, like starlight trapped in glass. The galaxy mourned, though most had never known her. The Dravari weapon was destroyed. The systems that had survived the cataclysm swore new oaths, not of conquest, but of restraint. They rebuilt slowly, guided by stories of the woman who had faced gods and found meaning in mercy. On Earth, in the old deserts of her home world, the winds carried whispers that sometimes, at night, the sky pulsed gold for a heartbeat. Some said it was just atmospheric phenomena. Others said it was her. And in the quiet between galaxies, where stars fade into nothing and time itself grows thin, something stirs. A presence, vast and gentle, watching. The same pulse that once filled Mara's dreams still echoes, faint but steady, like a promise that never ends. The void remembers who listens. And somewhere, beyond the reach of sight, two golden eyes open once more. Ancient, patient, and filled with something almost human. The galaxy's greatest predator bows still, not to empires, not to gods, but to the memory of a single Deathworlder who reminded the stars that even power must learn to kneel.